Baltimore Police, Anne Arundel Fire Department, Maryland State Police, Maryland Natural Resource Police, MPD, DCFD, and from the federal side, the U.S. Coast Guard, U.S. Army, U.S. Air Force, FBI, Secret Service, Customs and Border Patrol, Park Police, DOD, Naval District Washington, American Medical Response, and yes, the U.S. Department of Labor. All of those have been amazing partners and are one of the reasons why that this investigation continues to progress the way we want it to. As I said, we did family briefings last night, and today there are over 100 family members that are now in the area receiving briefings, and as part of a legislative requirement, receiving family assistance. They have been briefed by the medical examiner, the fire chief, NTSB chairman, and myself, along with the family assistant unit from PSA Airlines. In regard to NTSB staff, all staff are now on scene that have been requested, and I want to point out one specific staff member, because we're doing a joint NTSB and DOD investigation. The NTSB actually has a Black Hawk certified pilot on staff, on our personal staff, based out of Alaska. Once we realized the dynamics and the intricacies of the Black Hawk, we have brought that member in, and they are on scene now, providing direct technical assistance to the NTSB. Now, it does not mean that the DOD is not working and helping with us, but in order to maintain our independence, we have our own Black Hawk certified pilot in the working group for helicopters. Regarding salvage at this point, the Navy Supervisor of Salvage is conducting salvage operations at the current time. Barges are en route from Virginia Beach, and we anticipate them to be on scene early tomorrow morning. After their arrival, they will be secured and located, and then significant salvage operations will continue. They are ongoing right now, but this will be the main lifting. It's being done in conjunction with the DC Medical Examiner's Office in order to make sure simultaneously that any additional victims are recovered and immediately turned over to them for identification and returned to their families. SupSalv, which is the supervisor of salvage, is also conducting a debris mapping right now. This will help in our post-accident analysis of how the machine actually reacted to the incident. It'll also help us with understanding some of the airworthiness and crashworthiness and human factors. We have right now two distinct debris fields. One that houses the Sikorsky, which is in comparison to the CRJ, a little bit smaller. The CRJ is in another distinct area, and we consider a little bit larger. The good news is, based upon the initial mapping, while there are some small aspects of that debris field, there are large chunks that will be easily recoverable, and it will aid in the investigation when we bring it into the secured facility that will be located here on MWA. That will help us in the close proximity to be able to review and evaluate. Yesterday, we outlined for you a number of groups that have been stood up. A few of them in particular I want to call out, although every one of them have been working very hard. For your edification, the ATC group, Air Traffic Control, has been conducting interviews today. They're ongoing tonight. They will be ongoing for probably the next few days. We've had full cooperation in getting the witnesses that we need to gain those interviews. We will then take that information and match it with other data that we're receiving, and if necessary, conduct follow-up interviews at a later time. Our operations group now has on site an exemplar airplane similar to the CRJ 700. It's on a hard stand here at MWA. They will use that to evaluate cockpit configuration, seating, things like that. So whenever the salvage comes up, we're able to use an exemplary aircraft to match it against examples such as where maybe switches are, navigational aids, electronics. It is almost the exact same configuration as the incident aircraft. I want to clarify one thing. There's been a lot of questions and discussion regarding manifest. Let me make this very clear. The NTSB will not and has not released a manifest. We have not in our history, not in our past. We will not be in this accident. In fact, there's specific congressional language that whenever it is in our possession, it is not available through the Freedom of Information Act. It will not be included in our report. We will not be putting any names of any of the victims. Any release of that information will come from other individuals or groups. Regarding the recorders, as many of you saw last night, we recovered from the CRJ 2 separate recorders. One was a FDFR, that is a flight data recorder. FD. That was actually in what we consider good condition. As part of that process, it was soaked in alcohol overnight. It was then opened today, and we have a high level of confidence that we will be able to get a full download in the very near future. Now, once we do have that download, we will not be releasing immediately the information regarding it. We will have to go through, correct the data sets, make sure they're synchronized. This has approximately up to possibly 2,000 data points. Is that right, Bryce? So all of that has to be synchronized and looked at. It's a very laborious practice. It takes a lot of time. Regarding the CRJ's cockpit voice recorder, once it was recovered and opened, we found that it had water intrusion. That is not uncommon. It is not an unusual event for us to receive a recorder with water intrusion. We deal with that all the time. Our recorders division is one of the best in the country, in the world actually, and we have recorders sent everywhere, so there's a step. The CVR was soaked overnight in ionized water, at which point the team put the CVR into a vacuum oven in order to extract moisture. They are still checking electrical connections to determine if they're ready to try a download. It is one step of many steps that we will take in order to get that data, but we have a very high level of confidence that we will have it. We just have to work through a number of steps. Lastly, on recorders, the Sikorsky, where the CRJ has 2 separate recorders, the Sikorsky has a combined cockpit voice recorder and digital flight data recorder. It's in one box. I can report to you now, we have recovered the Sikorsky black box. It is safely at the NTSB headquarters. It will begin an evaluation, just as the other 2 recorders did last night, to determine when and how to take action. I can tell you from a visual inspection, we saw no exterior damage that would indicate that it was compromised at this time. So we have a high level of confidence that we will be able to have a full extraction from that as well. Those are some of the significant updates we have right now. Obviously, we'll be doing some more in the essence of time and making sure our team gets back. I think we're going to be able to take maybe 4 or 5 questions. I'll call on you, and I'll repeat it. So we'll try to play that game a little bit, please. Right here.
Thank you very much, Phil.
Your name and outlet, please.
Jonathan Kersley, Channel 9 Australia. Captain Sally Sullenberg, one of the heroes of the incident on the Hudson, said that he said we absolutely should be reviewing airspace, not just here, but in other places where there's a complex mix of traffic. Is he right? Is there time for a permanent shift in DC and across the country to keep airspace safe and separate between military and civilian aircraft?
So the question for those watching, is it this time now for us to possibly deconflict or change some of the airspace where military aircraft operate with commercial aircraft? I can't give you a definitive answer on that. What I can say is in this incident, it should not have happened. We have in aviation what's called a Swiss cheese approach, wherein if something fails, a backup should catch it. Multiple layers of redundancy. It's been a very long time since we've had a major aviation incident in the United States, and that's the reason why it's one of the safest forms of transportation in the country. But the only way they do that is by investigating what happens now and then making recommendations in the future. Again, the NTSB has done 100,000 aviation investigations. We've issued 15,000 recommendations. Over 84% have been accepted. Once this investigative report comes out, we will be advocating probably for years for changes that need to be made, but we'll not speculate on what needs to be done until we have the facts.
Todd, is there anything obvious?
Hey, I'll call on people. Sorry.
Member Rubin, Dave Jefferson from Reuters. Can you talk about how long it will take to recover the debris, how long you plan to be on site, and have you got any early data yet off the ATC tapes?
I think that was 3 or 4 together. How long the debris will take, how long we'll be on site, and have we gotten any information off of the air traffic control tapes. The debris, we are hopeful once the mapping is done that it will be done in what I will call quick order. I can make no guarantees of that because first and foremost, we need to make every effort and to make sure we're recovering every one of the people that perished in this accident. We'll have some cranes that'll be coming up, and once that happens, you'll see a lot more activity, and we'll be moving that in, but I don't want to give you a definitive time. I would say it will start in earnest probably on Sunday, and it will go through next week, and some of that's contingent upon weather and other things. Regarding the ATC tapes, we've received a lot of different information on ATC, and so I'm just going to preempt it. Off-the-shelf software programs are not always as accurate as the data we specifically get from NTSB, from the black boxes. All of that are factors that come into our investigation. So we will not speculate about ATC tapes that you may have heard and seen online or snippets. We are getting the full cooperation that we need to be able to make an accurate assessment and to make sure what we are saying is factual and that it will help and aid in the entire investigation.
Todd, Cooper from Channel 7 in Boston. Is there anything glaring from the videos that we've all seen that will tell you that the pilot in the Black Hawk helicopter made a mistake?
The question is, based on the videos, have we drawn any conclusions? We have not. We know that there was a significant incident in which the 2 aircraft collided, a pretty significant fireball. If you will recall, even after the first day, we only had maybe 1 or 2 grainy images that were coming out. We're seeing more and more at this time. So we're still collecting data, but we are not going to opine until we see a lot of other things in there. A couple more?
2 more?
Yes, sir.
Keep on team with CNN. How critical is it to interview the controller in the tower cab? How concerning is it to you, the reports that that controller was working 2 positions at the same time?
So the question was, how critical are the air traffic control interviews and basically staffing? So air traffic control interviews are critical. That's the reason why there's a process in place. That began immediately after the accident. It was preservation of that evidence. It was immediately taking down notes, getting logs, all that information. We will go back and look at any air traffic controller that was involved in this. We'll go back and look at their past probably 72 hours, even 2 or 3 weeks. We'll look at their training, their hiring, everything, what they probably ate that day. But it is not one point that tells us everything. It's layered into a lot of other information that's very critical. Regarding staffing, the FAA has had a very robust plan in looking at staffing. Obviously, we'll be looking at not only staffing that day, but progressively staffing. How many people, what job functions they were doing. Were they being combined? Were they not? What was the weather outside? What was the number of landings? I recall back during COVID, 1 runway was being used. Runway 1, that was the only one. 33, as traffic came back, started being opened up. So we would look at changes in traffic patterns, construction at the airport, all of that. It all paints a very big picture.
Can I just follow up on that?
Who are you? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Leo with APD. Have investigators interviewed air traffic controllers that they've done?
The question is, have we interviewed air traffic controllers? Yes. I think I started with,
Were they working at the time?
sorry.
They were working at the time.
I'm sorry, the clarification, was it an air traffic controller that was working at the time of the accident? Yes. Yes. Now, I'm not going to speculate, sorry. Nope, sorry. I'm not going to speculate. The next question is, was there 1, 2, 3? I don't have the answer for that right now. I know that the controller that was working at the time has been interviewed, and his interviews are ongoing throughout the day. Yes, ma'am, last one. The question is, has anyone from the White House reached out to me or other board members? I won't speak for other board members. I know that the chair did a briefing yesterday. It was publicly discussed and gave some information. I have not received any contact. I'm going to go back to something we talked about earlier. The NTSB is an independent bipartisan board. 58 years as the gold standard. Our job is to find the facts. But more importantly, our job is to make sure this tragedy doesn't happen again, regardless of what anyone may be saying. Our investigators never want to see this happen again, and I never want to have to go back and brief another set of family like that. Thank you.
Okay, we've been listening as the National Transportation Safety Board member Todd Inman there, giving us an update on the investigation into Wednesday night's midair crash in the Washington area. The headline here, it's got all the black boxes, 2 from the plane, 1 from the helicopter. That is extremely good news. They've got a high level of confidence that the data on there is going to be intact. And we're also getting, they say, full cooperation from the air traffic control staff who they've been interviewing. So we'll keep an eye on that. Our senior correspondent, transportation correspondent, Chris Van Cleve, is at Reagan National Airport. Chris, what stood out to you from what you heard there?
Well, Maurice, I think what is critically important is that they have found all 3 of those recorders, and at least the data recorder from the plane and the helicopter look to be in a good condition. They expect to get a good download there. They're going to have to do a little bit of work on the voice recorder. We learned there was water intrusion. That's not uncommon. They have a very skilled team at restoring that, but that will take a little bit more work before they'll be able to download that and begin to analyze it. I think the other thing we're hearing is that they expect the salvage effort to go on into next week. We learned earlier today that divers have sort of reached a point where they can't get any more progress in recovering remains, they think, until that airplane is out of the water. So the salvage effort becomes important not only for the investigation, but for the efforts to recover the lives lost. About 41 of the people that perished here of the 67 have been recovered. The rest, the unaccounted for, they think, are in a position in that airplane that they're going to need to get it out of the water in order to access it.
And Chris, what about the reporting that 1 air traffic controller was doing the job of 2? That stood out to a lot of us. And he said he's getting full cooperation from air traffic control staff. That should be big going forward.
Yeah, you know, they're going to want to understand what that controller's workflow was like leading up to that accident. But in a bigger picture, they're going to seek to understand the workflow at the Reagan National Airport control tower. In fact, we have learned it wasn't just 1 controller that was doing 2 jobs that night. It was 2 controllers doing the jobs essentially of 4 people. That may or may not result in a degradation of safety, but that is certainly something the NTSB is now going to look at, the human factors, if you will, and how that may have factored in, been one of the links in the chain that led us down the road to disaster. Okay,
Chris Van Cleve at Reagan National, thank you so much. Former NTSB Chair Robert Sumwalt joins me now. So, Robert, we were talking about the 2 black boxes being found, the 3 of them. That's very big. What do you make of that? And that they feel like there's a high level of confidence that the data on there is still good.
Absolutely, and that's certainly good news. As somebody who was at the NTSB for 15 years, we always want to make sure we can get good data off of those recorders.
How many investigations were you a part of in your career?
Well, altogether over 100. I was on scene doing the job that Todd Inman was doing for 35 accidents.
Yeah, when you hear him speak like that, talking about a high level of confidence in the data, What does that tell you?
Well, I think that's good news. The NTSB doesn't want to get ahead of itself. The fact that Member Inman is saying that he has that confidence, that I think that gives us optimism that they'll be able to get the voice data and they'll be able to get thousands of parameters off of each of those flight recorders.
And we've been talking so much this past week about the air traffic controllers. Why was the chopper in the same airspace at the same altitude as the plane? And what about the air traffic controller's role in that scenario as you could see it unfolding?
Well, Member Inman did say that, as you pointed out, they're getting full cooperation from the Air Traffic Control Organization. They've already interviewed the controller who is actively working each of those aircraft. And again, I think it's good that everybody is working well together.
The public demands answers. Everyone wants to know right away exactly what happened, right? That's how people are. What do you say to that?
Well, the NTSB is an excellent organization, and as Member Inman pointed out, they're the gold standard for accident investigation across the world. I think it's very important that they have their independence, that they exercise their independence, that they're allowed to do the job that Congress has enabled them to do. They've got the funding they need. We want to make sure they've got the funding and the resources and the time to carry out a proper investigation.
Yeah, we have to be patient as best we can. But as he said, they stick to the facts. That's what this is all about. Robert Sumwalt, thank you so much for your insight. And our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news. And tonight on the CBS Evening News, this has been a CBS News Special Report. I'm Maurice Dubois in New York.
Welcome to the Daily Report on Friday, January 31st. I'm Lindsay Reiser. The recovery operation continues as investigators work to find out what caused the deadly mid-air collision near D.C. And Federal Aviation Administration restricts helicopter routes close to the site of Wednesday's tragic incident indefinitely.
Investigators have found what's commonly known as the black box. It likely contains crucial flight data and voice recordings.
We'll look at the aircraft, we will look at the helicopter, we will look at the environment in which they were operating.
People are just heartbroken, it's devastating, to wake up and discover that this has even happened.
President Trump promised new 25% tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico.
The reason for that is because both Canada and Mexico have allowed an unprecedented invasion of illegal fentanyl that is killing American citizens.
I won't sugarcoat it. Our nation could be facing difficult times in the coming days and weeks.
Three of the president's most controversial nominees faced a barrage of tough questions on Capitol Hill.
Republicans do seem united around Kash Patel for FBI, but Tulsi Gabbard faces a steeper climb.
It's set to be a showdown at music's biggest night.
We've got a few big surprises of some megastars that are going to be performing.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. Investigators are searching for answers in one of the worst aircraft disasters in the United States, and the first that we've seen in 16 years. Crews returned to the Potomac River Friday in search of remains. 67 people are presumed dead after an American Airlines flight and an Army Black Hawk helicopter collided Wednesday night. The D.C. fire chief says they expect to recover all of the victims' bodies. Investigators have also found the black box from the helicopter, in addition to the black boxes from the passenger jet. Now, both transportation and Pentagon officials say the plane and helicopter were flying standard routes. However, flight data analyzed by CBS News shows the Black Hawk helicopter was flying above the maximum permitted altitude of 200 feet. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy has since restricted helicopter traffic around the airport. We're also beginning to hear from the families of some of the victims, including the father of Army Staff Sergeant Ryan O'Hara, the crew chief of the Army Black Hawk helicopter. He spoke exclusively with CBS News about his son.
He was the best kid. He just loved life, always inquisitive. First memories of him are taking apart every toy that he ever had. Part of the reason he became a crew chief, he wanted to understand how things worked. And Ryan was just such an easy baby to take care of. Made me a better person for having to raise him. I couldn't have asked for a better son.
CBS News correspondent Skylar Henry joins us now from Reagan National Airport in Arlington, Virginia. Skylar, what do we learn from the NTSB's update and how much progress has been made in these recovery efforts.
Yeah, I think the most significant news to come out of today's briefing was that they were able to recover that data recorder from the Sikorsky Black Hawk helicopter as well. That will help in addition to the black boxes that were recovered from the aircraft of that commercial regional American Airlines jet. They also said that they were able to start to begin the processes of dealing with those first couple of boxes, one of which member Inman said that was in good condition. The other saw a bit of water intrusion, his words, and that it will take a little bit of time to recover said data. We don't expect that information to come out immediately, but they called it crucial in order to help them the pieces together in this investigation. They also say that they are conducting interviews with air traffic control operators that were in the tower at the time of the collision and how critical and important those conversations will be, not only to match the data that is collected, but also to really sort of be part of this bigger investigation, so to speak. They will look into everything, staffing, what they even ate that day, to try to make sure they can deduce exactly what happened during the time of this collision. They also mentioned that there will be more barges on site in the Potomac River beginning tomorrow that will help remove the fuselage and other pieces of debris in the Potomac River, also pointing out that there are two distinct debris fields, one of which is the commercial regional jet, the other, the Black Hawk helicopter. We should point out that as it relates to the recovery process, the removal of that debris could help identify and recover more of those victims.
What have you heard from some of the service members taking part in this operation?
Yeah, we heard from the Coast Guard, one of the captains, Patrick Burkus, who said that there is really a team effort as it relates to putting all of the resources on the ground to try to help with this recovery process. Take a listen.
We put all available Coast Guard resources to bear on this response. We have multiple what we call our small boat assets, as well as Coast Guard cutters, and we've ordered additional crews to come in to make sure we keep a 24/7 presence on the waterway to support in any means that we can. Initially, search and rescue was our primary mission. Then we moved to recovery phase. But as always, we want to resume the waterway, make sure there's nothing obstructing the waterway, and we want to make sure the environment is safe. Once we do those things, we're going to continue to assist our other Unified Command partners to ensure we see this out through the end.
And to reiterate, this is a full-blown team effort. Officials urging those who may come into contact with debris moving down the river to not do that, to not touch it, to alert authorities, and also that they will need all the time that they need to try to recover as many of those bodies as they can.
Skylar Henry, thank you. CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata joins us now from the Pentagon. Charlie, flight data analyzed by CBS News shows the Black Hawk helicopter was flying above the permitted altitude of 200 feet, that maximum ceiling that you have been reporting on for more than 24 hours. In fact, flying more than double that. Can you explain why the ceiling is 200 feet, and do we know why the helicopter was flying at that particular altitude?
Right. So first of all, let's explain, Lindsay, why that ceiling is there at 200 feet, specifically on those routes closest to the airport along the Potomac. And it's for deconfliction. That's the word that the military uses to avoid commercial passenger planes coming in to land and taking off, specifically along those flight paths. And anybody who's spent time here in the D.C. area knows that it's not uncommon to see Black Hawk helicopters flying low levels over the river. Why this helicopter was over that ceiling is obviously a critical part of the investigation. An Army official I spoke with today said that we should treat that with caution at the moment. There are wind and weather considerations. We don't know yet whether the crew is instructed to take that specific corridor or that altitude, not only in terms of the course, but the elevation. But you have to point out, but the President and the Defense Secretary have pointed to the altitude of that chopper as the main contributing factor. But at this point, for others and investigators, it would be speculation if we were to suggest it was either the fault of the pilots or lack of a clear communication from the control tower. It's good news that they got those black boxes. We'll be able to hear about the communication between the pilots, and then also speaking to the control tower itself, because they'll have a better idea of why that helicopter was where it was when this collision happened.
The Pentagon has also released more information about the Black Hawk crew, and you also know about their mission. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so they released the names of two of the members. They've been named as 28-year-old Staff Sergeant Ryan Austin of Lilburn, Georgia, and 38-year-old Chief Warrant Officer Andrew Lloyd Eves of Great Mills, Maryland. O'Hara leaves behind a wife and a one-year-old son. As you said, we profiled our colleague, Mark Strassman, profiled him. His father, Eves, was also a father. O'Hara has been listed as presumed deceased, pending positive identification. This is the way the military stresses it. Eves is listed as duty status, whereabouts unknown, essentially because it has to do with recovery efforts that are continuing at the site of that Black Hawk debris. The Army is withholding the name of the other crew member. It's a female co-pilot at the request of the woman's family. They're described as very experienced. One of them had 1,000 flight hours, the other 500, which is significant for helicopter pilots. Now, in terms of the training, what they were doing there, yesterday, the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, said the training mission, more accurately described as an assessment exercise, had to do with the continuity of government. Those are the words that he used. We looked into that, and that's where helicopter crews prepare to evacuate high-ranking members of the government. You know where we are, right here in the Pentagon. We got the White House. We've got Capitol Hill in case of a catastrophic event or an attack. So this is a yearly assessment. We keep hearing the word routine. This is a routine mission. Happens all the time. Explain to me they have these tests in exactly these congested airspace, approaching planes in the dark, at night, to train in real-world scenario to ensure that they're ready if they're called upon. The other thing I have to point out is these exercises have been going on one way or another since like 9/11. A former Black Hawk pilot that I spoke to yesterday, he said he flew these missions on exactly those same routes in exactly those same helicopters under exactly those same conditions, and that was back in 2002, 2003. So they're clearly going to have to review it. As you said, the FAA has said those helicopter missions can't continue for now, so they've been suspended. They're going to have to rethink their tactics.
Charlie D'Agata, thank you.
Thank you.
CBS News has learned the Trump administration and its officials instructed all federal agencies to wipe clean any of their websites and social media accounts of diversity-related content. We're also following President Trump's promised tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China. The White House confirming they will go into effect Saturday. The president had previously said he was weighing whether oil imports would also be included. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was unable to clarify his decision, but defended the president's tariffs plan.
I think Americans who are concerned about increased prices should look at what President Trump did in his first term. He effectively implemented tariffs, and the average inflation rate during the first Trump administration was 1.9%. In fact, when President Trump left office, it was 1.4%. So President Trump is going to do everything he possibly can to cut the inflation crisis.
CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cortez joins me now at the White House. Nancy, we'll sort of take one of these topics at a time. First, what do we know about the removal of this DEI-related content, and how long are these websites expected to be down?
So it sounds right now, Lindsay, and I have to stress that this is all kind of unfolding and we still don't have complete information. But what we're being told by the White House is that entire government websites should not be down, that this was simply meant to try to remove specific content, and various agencies were given until 5 o'clock today to do it. The content that they say should have been eliminated had to do with the president's executive orders on transgender individuals, on DEI, things like that. Words associated with those topics were supposed to be purged from various government websites. But like so many of the president's other executive orders that have been issued with tight timeframes to comply, it sounds like some of these agencies have struggled to go in with surgical precision and remove only those topics by the deadline. And so we started getting reports at midday today from outside experts saying we're seeing all kinds of important data eliminated from government websites, health data, important demographic data that have nothing to do with DEI or transgender individuals. So what the White House is stressing is that it's only those topics that are supposed to be